Hello everyone, this is Causam, and what I'm bringing you today is a look at the what I'm calling the Lascivious one-piece swimsuit. This is an item that began life as a contract for a customer who decided they wanted a different type of item, and it was still in the discussion phase as far as what it should look like. So I had not laid down a single vertex of mesh uh, before the change was made for the customer. This is a customer who has a couple of hundred Victoria 4 characters and a couple of thousand poses to go with it. So when they want clothing that's pretty much always going to be custom clothing for this person, and but they had decided they wanted to go a different direction than this. But I liked the idea so much that I decided it was worth putting together for Genesis. And the final result is what you see right here. Okay, in this video I am going to cover materials, and these are all Iray materials, by the way. This is the material it loads with by default. And I'm also going to cover dForce, which is a fairly simple topic, and I'm also going to cover morphs so that you understand how to use this product most effectively. This product is made, like all of my products anymore, with dForce in mind. I say all of my products, I mean all of my clothing products have dForce. Okay, there's no rigging, but there are morphs. Well, there's the transfer utility rigging, of course, but there's no extra rigging or anything. It's not a complicated, I tend to over-explain things, I think. It's not a complicated item to use, but I do like to have people have an insight into how these things went together. And let's go ahead and get started with mats. Here we have any color examples or example. And what I have here is just white. Okay. Now, this texture you can change to any color you want. All right. And do it just the way you might expect. You just go to your base color and just choose a color, and there you go. It's just that simple. Go to hot pink, and there is a diffuse overlay with this. All right. If you don't like the diffuse overlay, simply change that number to 0. All right. I could make a preset for that, and maybe I will, but honestly, I think it's best. That's just like a one-click item. Okay. I like to, I assume, as always, there are a certain number of beginners watching. And I think that it's important to show beginners some of the basics of how to do various things in DAZ Studio. I'm not an expert by any means. I'm not a master by any means. There's just too much in this world of 3D to, there's, I don't think there's anybody who's an expert in all of it. Let's put it that way. And textures are something that I only just started paying closer attention to recently. I used to make my living with Photoshop, so I guess what I was doing was just kind of putting it on the back burner in my own mind, because I knew I could always catch up to it fairly quickly, which, I have. It isn't rocket science, for sure. But at any rate, here we go. That's the any color. All right, you can make that any color you want. Now I have a few glitter mats here. Okay, now the difference between these glitter mats and the any color is that the glitter mats have a base color map. All right, and they don't use a diffuse overlay. All right, so these glitter mats have some kind of glittery stuff going on. The reason I only made 3 of them is I'm trying to keep the zip file size down a little bit. When you get this much detail in a JPEG and put it out there at a 2K image, excuse me, the size of the files climbs pretty rapidly. All right. So on the next texture I'm going to show you, those files are about, say, 200 or 300K, the base color files. These are more like 1 to 2 megabytes. So This is just something that, I just wanted to keep the file size down. But if you know anything about Photoshop or GIMP, and you want to just add some noise to an image uh, and do various tricks with it, things like that, all you have to do is save that file as a 2K file, 2048 on the side, and bring it in right there. And you can change various things. I'll go ahead and show you teal. That was salmon, by the way. Here's teal, and then here's yellow. Three fairly varied colors. Let me take the environment map down a little bit to about 1.5. There, that way it's not quite so washed out looking. All right, and we have here a standard Genesis 8 character. You can see she's at base resolution. All right, and the reason for that is just, to make sure that things move along quickly enough. At any rate, you have a look at the glitter mats. Now let's go to, these are ones I'm calling tropical fish. Okay, and it's just 1 through 5. There's the first one. This is the one here that it loads by default. This one's slightly different than the others. It's got a base color and uses the diffuse overlay to give it the pattern. Okay, these others have a base color map. Okay, and I will leave it to you to figure out how to take advantage of that. Because when it comes to mats, as long as there are some base presets here, you can start playing with mats and textures all you want. Some of you are really, really good at that, much better than I am. But I try to do my best to give you something that you can have a few options with. There's 4, and here's 5. Okay, so these are, what inspired me with this is this normal map kind of looks a little bit like fish scales. So being that it's a swimsuit, I thought I would play with some color gradients in Photoshop, put that over the top of this, and see how it looked. And I thought it came out pretty well. Any of you familiar with Photoshop or GIMP, you can do gradient fills on images. So if you want to add some tropical fish, all you have to do is make a base color image in Photoshop or GIMP, either one, 2048 on a side, and save it here. A word on how I handle textures. Okay, the current way of doing things for most people in DAZ Studio seems to be to pull out like surface, pull surface out, and start drawing on the individual islands and the UV and all that stuff. By the way, I have included the UV for this. For those of you who want to do that, you're more than welcome to do that. But I think that it makes things more proprietary, number one, which I don't care for. Because it just, it's, in my view, it's, there may be something really good about the way Surface Painter does things in terms of normals and things like that. But also Surface Painter tends to, when it gets used the way it gets used now, which is by basically everybody, everything starts to look the same, because Surface Painter has a style to the way that those textures are made. And it looks like the same person on the planet Earth did all the textures for everybody's stuff. I don't like that. What I like to have is, I like to have options. So I simply, I create a UV that's a manageable UV, and then I just lay that on top of a 2048 image. I make the texel density half of that. I know that technically it's incorrect to do this, but it seems to look better with my method, is I make the texel density on clothing for Genesis 10.24, which is what you see here. And you can change that very, very easily in your mesh editor. So that's up to you. But you can use, what it gives you is the opportunity to just use standard 2048 images. It can be something you downloaded online and made some alterations to. It can just be something wild that you came up with, and you just want to see how it looks, And you should be able to do that without having UV mismatches. All right, these all pretty much go together. Okay, I just tried to make these hems make sense with the rest of the garment, but you can isolate those hems in the UV and make them something completely different, or just give them a different base color, right? So there you go. That is textures. Let me move into dForce. As I said in the beginning, dForce is in all of my clothing items now. The reason for that is that dForce gives you things that Morphs alone will not give you. That being said, I understand that particularly people who are new to DAZ may not have the computer hardware necessary to have a whole lot of things going with dForce. This is a relatively complex item when it comes to surfaces, as you can probably imagine in terms of dForce. But I work very hard to make sure that, if you have a product default that you can get back to, say you want to start playing around with dForce and change a few things, you can always get back to default real easily by just loading this set of physics right here. Okay, and it's really it works very well. All right. Also, I've got the smoothing velocity and all of that set in such a way that I feel that it is a pretty good result in terms of pose time and stabilization time, and also gives you a very nice smooth fit and a good look. And having said that, let's move on into, I am going to, well, I don't really want to do that. What I'm going to do is, I'm going to go to some of these poses up here, and hopefully I don't have to blank out the screen. Some of these are really, there we go. Now let me get to soups. Probably shouldn't have gone there either, or there. Look at that. Let me go all the way down here to glitter mats. There we go. I'll probably have to edit that part of the video because this is going up on YouTube, and I don't want to have any issues as far as that's concerned. All right, so here we are with a pose loaded. We have a material loaded, and there are some, this is about dForce, but if you know my product, you know that dForce and Morphs go hand in hand with my stuff. Okay, so let me get back to parameters here. Let's fold up Genesis 8, get here, go to Morphs, and you can see that they're color coded. Okay, and if I break it out, they are in different areas. Post simulation yellow, these are basically corrective morphs to use after you have run your simulation. Okay, you can do everything before if you want, but I recommend that you use these after the simulation. Pre-simulation, there's only one. It's color-coded red. Excuse me. And what this does is smooths out the underbreast that you get with Genesis. Now, on a standard Genesis female, it's probably not necessary to even dial it in at all. It really depends on your pose. But it's there, and if you have a character with a female character, of course, with larger breasts than a standard Genesis 8 female, you're going to want to dial this in to some degree. All right, and then run your simulation. Style morphs are blue. Okay, we have 4 crotch morphs for style. That's just, left, right, snugger, wider. Okay, you can see how the slider moves. I've started trying to take care to make sure that my morphs have a descriptive thing up here where you can, you know which way right off the bat to move the slider. You don't have to guess. We have shoulder, off shoulder left, off shoulder right. Let me show you that one real quick. That's just a style morph, which you can probably, these off shoulders you want to run pre-sim, probably, so that they, we're going to take her head and move it out a little bit there. For the character that I had initially set this pose up for, that head position worked, but it doesn't really appear to work too well for this one. Let's just take it side to side a little bit. And then, bend maybe? No. Too much, go to our neck. Sorry about that. I don't mean to waste too much of your time on this. But there we go. Let's do a twist to get her chin away from it. That because I wanted to show you this. Okay. If you dial it in beforehand, you'll probably get something like that at first. But again, these are just ways to set the garment up before you run the sim. And then you want to go ahead and run your sim. Now my simulation settings for this is I have best, okay, on my collision mode. And then I have a stabilization time of 2. Stabilization time of 2 or 3, either one really doesn't slow things down too much. Let's go to texture shaded, and let's run a sim so that you can see how it operates. You can see it reports spring issues very quickly. Remember, I've got that off shoulder dialed out, so the garment is off of her shoulder a little bit. And in this pose, it's not going to work quite so well, you can see, because her shoulder is moved way up and it's not going to want to cooperate. But since we're covering morphs, I wanted to show you that. So we're already in stabilization. We're only 30 seconds into the simulation, and we're almost done already. So this does not take very long at all to sim. One recommendation I'm going to make for you: when you run a simulation with a garment that has anything on the upper torso and your character has shoulder length hair, hide the hair, okay? Because it will interfere with shoulder straps and stuff. It'll slow things down and very possibly even go ahead and just explode your, your garment. So just do yourself a favor and hide the shoulder length hair. It'll go much faster. And it will, it'll not explode your garment. Okay, so here we go. It's a thong, of course, and you can see I've made some changes to the way I do dForce, so the thong doesn't just disappear up into the character. All right, so you have that, and you also have some morphs for widening that and moving it around and snugging it up, loosening it up, whatever have you. And you can see here that we did not need to dial that morph in at all for the breasts. However, let me just show you how that works. We'll just go ahead and increase this mannequin's breast size. Each eye, there we go. Let's just dial that up. Okay, so now we have something other than just standard Genesis 8 size breasts. We'll go here, we'll go to our morphs, and this is going to be our pre-sim, and we will dial that up. Now, this is not going to work for a final if you dial it up afterwards, okay? It won't. You're going to need to dial it up first and then run your sim, okay? So let's go back to texture shaded and run our sim. I've got that dialed up like 94. It'll go up to 200, and of course you can always go over here and under your parameter settings you can change those limits or just disable them altogether. And here we go. Again, it's running very quickly. We are 20 seconds in and we're a third of the way through stabilization. So it really performs well. And as you can see, it behaves. It behaves, and that's something I strove for. What I do now with form-fitting garments is I will, when I'm first developing the mesh and the dForce, I will take it through 30 or 40 poses, complete pose sets and all kinds of stuff to to try to get it to explode, to break, to do something wrong. And it does, of course. And then I figure out what it is that I need to change. I change it, and then I move on. And then I will sometimes backtrack to a previous pose that did work to see if that still works. So I go to a lot of trouble now to make sure that dForce is going to be as trouble-free as possible. And you can see that that worked out really well. Now sometimes, depends on your character, depends on her breast size, depends on the pose, there will be some area here that comes down away from the breast. And what I did at first was I monkeyed with dForce forever and a day trying to get it to change that, and it did, but it also created some problems a little bit higher on the breast when I did that. And given the nature of the garment, the way these hems are, the way dForce is set up, it it has to be that way. I'll just leave it at that. So what I did was I created a morph, of course, and this would be your post simulation. It's your breast edge correction, and you can see that if you just dial that up, if this had breasts where it came out like that, this morph will take care of it. It'll just tuck that right back in. So that's all set. I've showed you the shoulders. The shoulders have some, their height adjustments. Okay, they will. I've already shown you the style ones where it slips off the shoulder. You also have side to side. You see that? And we have a nipple correction right and left. That's for if you get poked through. Okay. Breast edge correction, and this is just all looser or snugger. Okay, you can snug it up. It just, again, it depends on your character, your pose, your situation. But you have a tool there to take care of those things. Thickness is probably going to be your most used corrective morph. And the reason for that is it is a mesh offset. It's a push modifier that has been saved as a morph. Okay, and it loads by default at 0.10. The reason that's in there is if you were to get poked through anywhere on the garment after you run the simulation, you can just dial your thickness up a little bit and it takes care of it. That's usually sufficient to take care of if you have poke through on the nipples. But sometimes, and again, it depends on your character, your settings, all that good stuff. Sometimes it may not, and so you have an additional nipple correction up here to take care of that. So style we've covered, pre-sim, we've covered that, we've covered post-simulation, and there we are in a pose, and it has behaved very, very well. And I think that, let me go ahead because I want to spin it around and show you. Even though this is just a mannequin with no textures and no genital attachment, I don't want to have anybody on YouTube being offended by it. So let me go ahead and swing that, and you can see that you can make quite a lot of adjustments here, and you can use these either before or after you run the sim, and that's true of all of these, but I particularly this one want you to for your best result, dial that in before you run a simulation. Okay, so here we have left and right are separate. They're not just mirrors of each other. Okay, so, and I'm not going to dial it too far again because we're on YouTube here, but you get the point. So let me get rid of that, and you can see that this, at 100%, there's where it is, okay, and it'll also narrow way up, okay. And if you use that in a different pose and with a genital attachment, you'll get a spectacularly different result. Let's just put it that way. All right, so there is an introduction to the Lascivious one-piece swimsuit. That was pretty painless. It covered everything, I believe. If you have any questions or comments, please drop them in the comments section below. Don't forget to hit the like and subscribe. This is Causam. Until we see each other again, happy rendering.